Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 221st Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, unargumentative political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss the changing face of nonprofit organizations, including the use of an amount of donations and loyalty to their stated purposes. Today's panel begins with Patty Haskins, former member of the Wadsworth City Council and the faculty of Wadsworth Senior High School. Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist, and Tom Finley, retired VP of Human Resources Development of Rubbermaid Incorporated. Patty, in the last 10 years, the growth in the number of new nonprofit organizations has outgrown the number of new for-profit organizations by a ratio of 10 to 1. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, when you first posed this question, I didn't realize there was such an increase in nonprofits till I looked it up. There has been, right now, there's over 1.5 million nonprofits in the country. And what I found is, like you said, there's like this 10% gap that over a period of time, for-profit organizations have increased by 2 to 3%, while nonprofits have increased by 20%. And that's staggering. Right now, nonprofits employ close to 12 million people, which is a large percentage of our population. There's, a lot of people employed in that area. Now, why this is being done, I think partially because of perhaps an increased need or awareness of social problems that occur, whether that be for the needy here or outside of the country, but also because of the increase in weather and natural disaster type situations. Every time that there is a hurricane, that there is a earthquake, that there is a flooding situation, we see new nonprofits open their doors to assist those people that are in need. One of the other things that's happened is those nonprofits then have increased their usage because they have so much work with corporate partnerships. In many cases, you'll see advertisements on TV shows that if you make a donation of $10, our network will match that donation of $10, or a corporation that sponsors it will help with that. There seems to be this greater demand for helping or supporting others. Also, I think another reason it's increased is because of the advanced technology that we have, which make it easier for nonprofits to obtain money and to distribute money. There are constant ways they can email out, or to make it easy just by hitting a promo code of some type to make a donation. You can text a certain number and automatically donate certain funds, which makes it easier to reach the person you're trying to get money from to help in your nonprofit. And it makes it easier for that person then to do the actual donation. Of course, one of the big reasons we have nonprofits and over a profit situation is the fact that there are no taxes on them. So since they are not taxed, and that's kind of a long procedure to go through and make sure that you're not taxed as a nonprofit, but it makes it easier for that corporation to operate. One of the concerns you have, though, with nonprofits, especially with this increase, is looking and making sure that when you make a donation, that it is a reputable nonprofit. And there are many nonprofits out there that are not. One of the first things you want to look at is what percentage of the money that they receive is going to actually help the particular charity or the group of individuals involved, and what percent of their money that's coming in is used to pay salary. And there are some that are notorious for taking 90 cents out of every dollar and using it to pay their officials, and only 10 cents of every dollar is actually going to the charity. And there's ways to search that. If you just look up a nonprofit, they do have to disclose that, and there are many websites that'll tell you that. Now, you have to look at a lot of things. Now, there are some that are maybe not 98% going towards the charity, but that's because they have increased cost. For example, something like St. Jude's. St. Jude's is a wonderful charity, a wonderful nonprofit, and I think something like 33% of their money that they bring in goes to cost. But then you also have to look at the fact that St. Jude is supporting a hospital with very expensive equipment and so forth. And I think it's amazing they can do the charitable work that they do only using 33% of every dollar taken in for overhead costs. But it's important to look at that. Also, to look to see if there's fraud involved. I mean, you can even go so far as to say, like GoFundMe accounts in a way or a form of charity where somebody that's in need of money basically sets up this little nonprofit on their own and collects dollars. And you honestly don't know whether that money is actually going to someone that needs it or if this is a case of fraud. So a lot of things to look at there.
Before we go on to Bryan, I wanted you to tell me again, how many nonprofits did you see?
How many
nonprofits are there?
1.5 million.
1.5 million. And how many employees do they have?
11.9 million.
Okay. Bryan, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, Patty brings up some good points. I think that one of the reasons why we've seen sort of a mushrooming of these particular nonprofits is that our population is getting a little older. Let me share with you my little experience with my mother. May she rest in peace. She would get tons and tons of solicitations. They were confusing to her because some of them looked like a bill. And in her advanced age, she would send them $10 or $15 every time she got some sort of notice, some sort of affinity group that would send something. I don't want to name any of them because there's a lot of them out there. And the minute you make a donation, they swamp you with solicitations. A good friend of mine, case in point, a good friend of mine, his wife passed away. I made a donation to the cancer clinic that she went to, and as well as some other things. On a weekly basis, I get a solicitation of some sort from this organization. I mean, so in the mail and email, the last thing you want to do is give them your email address, because your inbox will be flooded with requests for $5, $8, $10, or whatever. So as we get older, it's the charitable nature of us all to want to participate in some way, whether it's a $5 bill or a $10 bill. And when, like we explained to my mom, just because it had her name on it didn't mean that they actually knew her. The letter was personalized to her. She thought, well, they know me. I mean, dear Evelyn, I got to send $10 to them. She had a shopping bag full, and those were her bills. And she was going to $5 here, $10 there, $15 there. Well, your dad was in the military, so I got to send $20 to this project, build a house. I'm sure it was a good one. Okay. I don't want to disparage any group out there, but once your name is on their list, you're going to get swamped with their solicitations. I suggest to people that first they look at their church, because most people belong or have some sort of relationship with their local church. Most churches do a pretty good job of distributing your offering. Some churches have an area, something on the statement that says, a local family in need or something like that. Once you look at your church, look at local charitable organizations. I can think of 4 or 5 right off the top of my head, which we don't have to name, but they gladly take your $10, $20 check. And then when you see something on a national level, maybe look at like a Red Cross or United Way, that they do their best. Yeah, there are administrative costs to it, but control your charitable giving to organizations that you feel pretty comfortable with giving. And you really don't, it's great to look every day you get something. I mean, you can do all the research you want on them, and some, like the Shriners. I've given to the Shriners before. They do a great job. When you talk about St. Jude's, there's a lot of very good ones out there that you can point your dollars to that really make a difference in people's lives. But I think we've seen this explosion in these affinity groups that latch on to a disaster, which I understand, that's okay. But once the disaster's over, you should shut down that 501c3. That's my own opinion. You can't keep giving to the people that had the tornado 18 years ago in Kansas. They've got to be done. There's got to be a final, we're done. We've already rebuilt the state. So stop giving money to us. But that doesn't seem to happen. So that's my take on it. I'm all for charitable giving. Just aim your charitable dollars to organizations that and are comfortable with. And I usually tell people to start out with their church and broaden the circle a little bit.
Good advice. Ron, what are your thoughts?
Bryan, that's interesting. Our mission project for this month at my church is supporting an organization down in Kentucky that is rebuilding their town after a tornado about 2 years ago. In fact, one of our members just went down there for a week to build houses. So I think it'll be worth looking at whether that continues once that project is finished. Well, in doing my homework on this, not only just the proliferation, but the types of things that are going on. And I think probably one of the most interesting one is the Citizens United decision about 10 years ago. This is a nonprofit that put out a propaganda thing against Hillary Clinton during that thing. And it was shut down because of the proximity to the election in the first place, and secondly, because nonprofits in general, unless they are a political group organized for that purpose, are not supposed to engage in politics. Well, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that it was a violation of the corporations or other outside groups' First Amendment rights not to allow them any free access, and it was supposed to be promote transparency, and the concept was that, well, it's an independent group, so there won't be any corruption. Both of those turned out not to be quite true. But another thing that came up was kind of interesting too. There was I just happened to see in the paper this week, since I've been thinking about this, in the city of Akron, there's a mayoral run campaign going on, and there was a group that called themselves. Let's see what we got here. Where's my note? Partners Advancing Our Future. They formed a nonprofit for the purpose of doing politically things, and they got called to account because of supporting a particular candidate. And it turns out that they are allowed to do that. They are a type of nonprofit, which a 501c4 that is allowed to do this as long as it is not a significant amount of their operations to do politics. Now, the IRS hasn't defined what significant is, but so they're going on. And the article in the paper pointed out two rather well-known organizations that do this. One is the NRA, the other is Planned Parenthood. So thinking about that, both of these organizations are NRA promotes themselves as an educational thing, and Planned Parenthood, of course, is a health organization. Both engage in political activities, and I suppose that's okay, because there's, again, it's supposed not to be a significant part of their operations, and I don't know if it is, and you can't really hardly define that apparently. But why not allow an organization to, and they're trying to promote their their point of view to get engaged with the people in the government who have a possible role in helping facilitate that. And I can see that that's a possibility. I think that you do have to try to insist on it as you do your research and looking at this. You have to insist on how transparent are they, and again, as Patty said, what percentage of their profits is going, their thing is going to it, and are they following all the rules? Nonprofits in general are controlled by the state in which they are, so there are different regulations depending on the state. But in general, they have to do certain things, and you have to be aware of whether they're doing that or not. I get a couple of years ago, my wife and I started. I got traveling out through the West and going through some of the Native American territories and looking at the really deplorable conditions in the communities out there. Began supporting a couple of schools, one in Arizona, or one in Nevada, and one up in South Dakota, Indian schools, residential schools. These are much different than they were when they took the kids away from their homes and tried to educate the Indian out of them. So we started doing that, and we've cut back. But again, as Bryan says, about twice a month, I get a letter from one of these two. Okay, the children want to doing this, or we need to support our community, and so on and so forth. Like everybody else, I budget my activities in that regard, and don't give everyone. Try to give once or twice a year. So I think you have to watch out for that. You have to look out for and talking at that, they almost always send me something. It might be a tote bag. It might be one of these little dream catchers. I've gotten you get so many of those.
Hey, Ron, my mother would get dream catchers at Christmas time out the wazoo.
Absolutely.
She must be donating to those. She was donating probably to those same schools.
Absolutely. So that's a couple of thoughts I had there, and there's a wide proliferation. I saw a list of that of the types of 501c materials are. I've been involved in three of them, or am involved in one now with Right and Left Incorporated, who sponsored this program. In Danbury, I was involved with an organization called Amos House through the church, which was a homeless shelter and a educational program for the residents therein. And again, with the Danbury Music, that was of course a public service thing. And the Danbury Music Center, which was an musical organization, which was very widespread, started in 1935, as old as I am. So, and promoted a lot of cultural activities throughout the community with youth and adults and so on. So I was on both of those boards of directors at one point. So it's interesting to do. It's interesting to see it. Those were the old traditional types of the 501 organizations, and not some of the new political ones. So you gotta be on your toes. You gotta see what's going on, but there's some good and some bad, obviously.
Tom, what are your thoughts?
I'm relating it to compensation as a first attention getter, if you will. And so the first thing that happens to me is when I see my value, exorbitant salaries paid to executives on some of the charitable organizations, it's my signal to automatically say, oh, that's no more giving to that organization. And that's a decision I've made on very faulty information, that sort of thing. But it does lead me to trail the look at what the salaries of organizations means to the government. For instance, I don't know how the government taxes the employment, the money's made by employees. I assume it's on the same basis. So when we say the CEO gets a huge $1 million salary, is that taxed the same way? Don't know the answer.
It is. It's ordinary income to the executive. There's nothing, that's not tax-free income to them. They work for an organization. So yeah, I can tell you 110% that these executives pay Social Security, all that kind of stuff. they're employees of that 501c3. But I agree with your point that when someone's making $600,000 a year and gets a $400,000 bonus, I would probably not be donating to that organization. But
well, you're going to hate Kaiser Permanente. Their CEO makes $18 million a year.
Yeah, which is, you know,
that's a
so what happens to the other salaries?
Basketball player salaries there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so it raises a big question. Now, I don't want to ever move away from the value that we have in this country of being a charitable culture. That we don't want to diminish. It's a very healthy thing, I think. And so we have to be careful about getting the government involved in the taxation and therefore limiting the application of funds to charitable groups that are doing great jobs. So there is this discrepancies on, no, it says confusion about should you be giving money to a company whose CEO is making those kind of dollars.
It might depend on the size of the organization too, because I think probably, obviously, so many cases CEO salaries are grossly inflated, but it's a significant job to administer a huge organization, and maybe some of these salaries are justified in that case. It's tough judgment. I agree with you there. It's a tough thing.
Well, that's one of the reasons for the increase in the numbers, is that in many of these charitable organizations, the salaries have gone up, but that was intentional because many of them were finding that it was difficult to get people to donate their time for free. And as the nonprofit grew in size, or the necessity for that nonprofit grew in size, in order to attract qualified, competent people that have the time, they do have to be paid. Now, should it be exorbitant? No. And that's where, what Tom is talking about. You want to look at that particular salary and how much is paid out. And are you getting your bang for your buck? If 80% of the money is going to salaries and only 20% is going to the charity, then you might want to start questioning whether or not that's an organization that you want to make a donation to.
Yeah. When I first started thinking about this topic, I was thinking mainly about social action nonprofits, like Black Lives Matter and some others. But when the more research of that, I found out the really big ones, the predominant section for large nonprofit organizations is in healthcare and museums and arts organizations. They certainly lead the way. You have to go way down the list of large organizations before you find one that's involved in social action.
Right. Well, we don't really, there are nonprofits like, different civic groups that we all belong to. Those are nonprofits.
Yeah.
And we don't, and like you said, John, they're not all doing civic or actually doing charitable work, but they're doing other.
That's where you really get into this conflict, at least for me, is that, well, where does our government get involved in policing, excuse the word, organizations like the police, profitable organizations, and making sure they're doing their tax work and all that sort of thing? And I don't know the answer to that question. It just raises the question, who does supervise, who does look at? And I'm going to use an example. It's a very biased example, but why the National Rifle Association is not doing something about an assault rifle being a legal weapon in the hands of a U.S. citizen. All the violence is taking place around firearms right now. Should our government be involved? Well, should our government be involved in some of the supervision of how charities and those monies are big service.
They are, to the extent that the 501c3s and 4s, et cetera. Now, we're a 501c3, and we have to report on a 990 to the IRS every year, the 990, and that I don't know what would happen if you don't report. I know that the Black Lives Matter didn't for the longest time, even though they, I think in their very early beginnings after the, not Rodney King, George, what's his name?
Floyd. George Floyd.
Floyd, yeah, they took in $90 million in the aftermath of that. But the name is so catchy that well, in any event, the upshot is that the social organizations, social justice organizations, are really a small portion of this 1.5 million nonprofits out there.
Yeah.
And the really expensive ones are, like I say, they're arts organizations, museums, research, and healthcare. But I wanted to just, in closing here, make one comment. I have to take a shot at Black Lives Matter because I don't like them much. What's her name? Lori Styron of Charity Watch described Black Lives Matter as a giant ghost ship full of treasure drifting in the night with no captain, no discernible crew, and no clear direction. I wonder how many charities that describes.
There has been an investigation into Black Lives Matter, because of that, as has been the case with the NRA and its leaders, misuse of funds and plane trips and houses and so forth, and where your money is donating. You have a rights wing organization and a left wing organization, and no side seems to be innocent of doing things that are selfish and unreasonable in this country.
Well, unfortunately,
I just would make this observation. I think what will happen is what happens with the private sector. Competition begins to level and define the income and the expenditures. And so I would imagine that's how it's going to affect the charitable organizations as they grow and in size and influence. So,
okay, folks, that's all the time we've got for today. I've got to scoot off. I've got a dental appointment.
Well, good luck, sir.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.